That is for an impact weapon, because if this was an edged weapon and I did this, he would cut my arm. When I practice in the mirror, I cut with it. You see, I'm always cutting and slicing. I'm trying to get my lines nice and straight. Your probability of being able to survive in a violent altercation against two people is pretty low. So bringing this to the party is a big help. Hey guys, thank you for checking out our video today. Like, subscribe, comment down below, hit the bell so you can be notified every time we get a new video. Today we're going to be working on the stick and how we will the stick and understanding the stick better for Kali. Let's go get started. One thing that we need to talk about when it comes to the stick, okay? And there'll be people that will argue with me about this. A lot of people have their opinions, but based on what I was taught and based on what I've studied about history, where did the stick come from in the Filipino martial arts? Spain took over the Philippines. They occupied the Philippines over 400 years. During that time, they took away the right to have swords and knives. What they started to do is they have vines that hang, and what they would do is they put weight on the end of the vine and let it get straight, and they would cut them so they would be straight. They started using rattan in its place of a sword. So I think one of the biggest things that I would say there is misconception. And another part is, I know Filipino martial artists that practice, they call their arnis, for instance. It can be very controversial because it's been going back for hundreds of years. And practitioners, when they're born and they are raised in the Filipino martial arts, they'll call their art eskrima, or they'll call their art arnis. And these are both Spanish words. And the way I was explained to by Guru Dan Asano and also Tuan Leo Gaha is that the stick represents any weapon of equal length, one. The other, we treat the stick as if it is a sword first, because the stick represented the sword. It represents the sword. But a lot of Filipino martial arts out there have gotten so far away from their indigenous and the true aspect of when it comes to the stick and what it was, and they've developed techniques based on impact weapons, which is totally fine, and which is awesome, and we teach those techniques as well. But we have to always remember. We always say we have to remember where the stick came from, and we have to remember where the Filipino martial arts came from, and that's why we call the Inasano family and also the Tuan Leo Gaha family call their art Kali, to differentiate and really praise the indigenous combatives that came before the Spaniard occupation and the major impact that it caused on the Filipino people. So that is one of the main historical reasons why we treat the stick differently. I've had Filipino teachers even make fun of me because the stick that I use a lot of times, and not always, is thinner and lighter and all that. And the reason why is because they're used to using a heavier, which is good, which we do too. A heavier stick is for impact, which makes sense, and we do that. But a lot of times that there's a big misunderstanding about, and I'm sure there'll be people that'll disagree with me, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to pay homage to the Filipino people, the indigenous people, before Spain took over and in many ways destroyed their culture. So when we look at the weapon, the first thing I want you to always think about, if you're a student of mine or you follow the way that I do Kali, we perform the weapon as if it is an edged weapon. So when I do that, I'm cutting with the stick. I am not striking with the stick unless we are practicing impact weapon. We differentiate between impact weapon and edged weapon. And so one of the big things that I've kind of adopted is bringing in also trainers that look like edged weapons. That's one. They can do them with the aircraft aluminum or with polymer plastic both of those that are shaped like a sword, so you get the practice of using the sword. So for instance, when I practice in the mirror, I cut with it. You see, I'm always cutting and slicing. I'm trying to get my lines nice and straight. I'm always trying to develop my movement with the sword. When you think about stick fighting, okay, you can think about the stick fighting as having a heavier weapon and you're banging into each other and you're trying to strike and that's a valuable type of training, and then also being able to cut with the weapon and treat the weapon as if it is an edge weapon. So what I want to do today is I'm just trying to help educate people about the Filipino martial arts, and why we do what we do, why we differentiate between edge weapons and impact weapons. Okay, so for instance, when he gives me a number 1, if I did this technique right here, this is for an impact weapon. When I wrap my arm around like this and I disarm and then I strike, okay? That is for an impact weapon, because if this was an edged weapon and I did this, he would cut my arm, you see? For instance, he feeds me the same exact technique and I come around this way and I cut. If it's an edged weapon, now I have the edged weapon laying on the side of my arm and I'm able to eject it, you see, and then I can follow up, okay? This is a very important principle to everything that we teach in the martial arts. So we differentiate between an impact weapon and an edge weapon, and I think you guys should too. When we do a stick and when we work with heavy sticks, for instance. So for instance, something like this, something that's got a little more girth to it, a little more heaviness to it. This is a perfect example of an impact weapon. I practice constantly with heavy weapons to not only practice as if it's an impact weapon, but also to develop and build up my arms to be able to handle a weapon when I wield it. Because you don't know what you're going to end up picking up if you got into an altercation or a situation. You may have it may be an axe or a machete. It could be anything. Another impact weapon is the flexible baton. See this? Okay. This has got a nice little knob at the end, gives a little bit of weight. This has some weight to it, okay? Impact weapon is super important, all right? I always tell my students, and this is something I recommend you do, is you have one of these flexible batons at every doorway of your house, and you have one in the door of your car and the trunk of your car, so that when you go home, when you're walking from the gym at night or you're walking from the grocery store and a lot of attacks take place, and it's usually multiple attackers. They come in, you're either loading up stuff in your groceries in the back of your car, and somebody attacks you to try to rob you, and it's multiple attackers. Guess what? In most states, this is an equalizer against 2 people, because if 2 people attack you, then it's a violent and a threatening, life and death threatening situation. An impact weapon like this is legal you have to check out your state, but very important weapon to have when it comes to multiple attackers. You know, it's not like a kung fu movie where you're kicking one person and punching the other person. You need to have something that's a real equalizer, okay, against 2 people, because your probability of being able to survive in a violent altercation against 2 people is pretty low. So bringing this to the party is a big help. So impact weapons, okay, and then we have edge weapons. Here is a aluminum type trainer you could use. It's not real safe. It's not as safe as some of the other ones, but this is a practice trainer you could use with another partner to practice willing the weapon properly so that the edge is correct. If you wanted an alternative to the collapsible baton, maybe you're worried about it not coming out quick enough, you can always get yourself a billy club as well. Now, one of the other things we have is, what I always tell my students is, you should get yourself a machete, 2 machetes that are live, that are nicer, that have an edge, and 2 that are from like a flea market or something like that. You grind the blade down, wrap some tape around it, and you use this inside your house. You practice willing the weapon so that when you get the edge of the weapon pointing the right direction. And this is I find this to be a very important aspect to the Filipino Kali. When I will the weapon with the stick, I want to make sure the knuckles face the direction of where I'm attacking, because that's the way that it would be with an edged weapon. So for instance, when he gives me number 1 and I do a roof, I come back in, I'm always cutting as if my stick is an edged weapon, okay? Same thing, so if I come in and I'm gonna slide, so I'm gonna slide and I'm gonna cut like this, see that? And that's how you would use an edged weapon. I want you to keep that in mind, because, and don't forget that that's what this is. If you practice Filipino Kali, that this is considered an edged weapon first, okay? I hope this was informative, and I hope that you start to engage this. If you practice Arnis or Eskrima and you don't treat the stick like a edged weapon, you start to incorporate this into your training, okay? Because that is the indigenous way of doing so. I hope you guys have a great day, and I hope this was informative. I'll see you next time. Hey guys, thank you for checking out our video today. Comment down below if you have any questions about what we covered today. Go to our website, pinnaclecombatarts.com. And thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.